Welcome to the webinar. The goal for today is to cover a number of things that people seem to get Welcome to the webinar. My goal for Welcome to the webinar. Welcome to the webinar. My goal for today is to cover all of the basics that you need to know to set up a WordPress for Toastmasters website. Particularly things that people seem to get stuck on, because I do host sites at the Toastmasters.org domain. I notice a number of people have set up their sites and they don't seem to have gotten too far beyond step one. And so if you're stuck, I'm going to try and help get you unstuck. Here's a little information about me that you can find on my LinkedIn page. I do encourage you to track me down on LinkedIn. Say something like, thanks for the webinar, so that I know where this connection is coming from. And I'll be glad to connect with you, more than glad to connect with you. One of my goals in doing this work is to broaden my professional network. That's my selfish motivation. The reason I use WordPress as a starting point is that it is a very powerful web publishing platform. It is used by many major publications, as well as corporate and marketing websites. So it is a general purpose publishing tool originally created by bloggers for bloggers that can also be used to offer a number of other types of content. It has a plugin extension model built into it that I've been able to take advantage of to add Toastmasters specific features. So there are two related websites that I use to promote and offer services in connection with this. The WordPress for Toastmasters website is the marketing site that talks about how wonderful it all is. It's also the place where I'm trying to build out a set of documentation. And the documentation I recognize still needs to be improved. I have here in the webinar with me today Stephanie Nolan, who's agreed to help organize a volunteer project to improve those materials. But it is something that I'm working on. Now, the software itself is free, and you could go to GoDaddy, or the web host I really recommend is SiteGround. You can set up your own internet domain and your own website, and you can install a little bit of extra software, and you can be off to the races with one of these sites. However, to make it a little bit simpler, particularly for people who aren't necessarily techies, I do offer the Toastmasters.org domain, and that is where you can go in and sign up for a website. You can start out for free, and then if you find it's useful to your site, you can pay a little bit of money, $30 per year, for it to be hosted on a website that I administer for you. So we can talk about those trade-offs as we go along. If you were to set up your own website, you would install three pieces of software, two plugins and a theme. So the two plugins are RSVP Maker, which is the underlying calendar system, event registration system. It also includes some functions for email that can be useful in the context of Toastmasters. And then on top of that, you add the RSVP Maker for Toastmasters extension, which is specifically the agenda management, the other things that are more specific to the Toastmasters context. And then in WordPress, a theme is a set of templates for adding things like branding. So LECTERN is the Toastmasters branded theme. It actually isn't distributed through WordPress.org with any of the Toastmasters branded assets, because that would be against both their rules and Toastmasters rules. But I make it easy for you to add one of these branded headers. And I have also done some work on making this mobile friendly so that the website, if viewed from a mobile browser, just kind of reformats to fit in that frame. So there's really two aspects to the WordPress for Toastmasters suite. One really starts with WordPress itself, which is a system for publishing all sorts of information. There is a blog built in, and that is a convenient way of adding sort of news content, promotional content about somebody winning an award. It might be the Toastmasters thoughts for the day. It might be the VP of Education's tips on how to do a better job with eye contact and body language. So articles like that you can publish, that get added to the blog. And over time you build up a library of interesting content that increases your search engine rankings, is material that people can explore to see that this is a special club because they have a bunch of award winners, contest winners in this club. And so maybe that's the club that I want to join. So that's the marketing personality. And then there's the functional personality. Again, this is more stuff that I've added on top to allow people to come in and sign up for an open role, to allow responsible members of the club to come in and edit those roles. And then if you're going to sign up for a speech, you would pick from the drop-down list a specific manual or path, a specific project, and the form does try to automatically add in there the speech time parameters. Now you can edit that manually if you're diverging, if you've gotten permission from the Toastmaster of the day or the VP of Education to go a little bit longer with the speech than is standard. You can modify that as you need to. But the starting points are in there. You would just add your speech title, and you can add an introduction for the Toastmaster of the day to see. There is also a feature that allows you to email out the agenda. So when you choose email from the menu labeled agenda, you get sort of this starter template that includes all the details from the agenda with an emphasis on showing the open roles that we want people to sign up for. So you can send out a message saying that we have lots of roles still open, please come in and sign up, and we give them the link so they go to the right page to sign up for events at that meeting. And hopefully you don't have 16 roles open, at least not a couple of days before the event, but you might have a few roles open. And so sending this out can be a way of saving you work as a club officer as you try and fill your agenda. Again, to send out specifically what roles are open and guide people to the correct page where they can fill those roles. The standard agenda for a brick and mortar club looks something like this, with a sidebar down the side where you can add some additional information about your club mission, upcoming events, things like that. And then we have the main part of the agenda that actually spells out what people are going to do. Shows also any openings that might remain that still haven't been filled on the agenda, even when you're printing it the night before, so that you know to fill them. And then for all these self-service features to work, we would go into Club Central to the club roster, and we can download the spreadsheet version of the roster, copy all that information, and we're going to put it into the Add Member screen under Users. We're just going to copy and paste all that information in here. So this is a simple way of importing data. We're going to click Import. And it presents us with this long series of forms of all these people whose information I'm going to import. If I see a typo in here, I can fix it at this point. I go down to the bottom and I click Submit. And so accounts are created on the system, and each of these people will receive an email notification saying, come in, set your password, learn about how to work with this system. That new member guide link is something that actually I figured out I need to update. So Stephanie is working with me on that.
Now, I wanted to show a few things that can be customized for an online club. So this is online presenters. We've changed the agenda a little bit. We've eliminated the sidebar, and we have a block there that talks about how we're going to have a little warm-up period for checking out that the technology is working before the formal meeting begins. And then we have a couple of custom roles on the agenda for a watcher, who's the person who keeps track of whether people are visually representing themselves well on screen, so body language as well as slides and so forth. And we have a chat monitor. And I know a number of other online clubs have these same roles. Those of you who are being forced online might consider whether those things that you should offer for the time being. And then also, I find it awkward to, even though the pathways evaluations are available as PDFs that you can email back and forth, this is supposed to be a more convenient way of doing that, where you can have a web-based version that the evaluator signs into. This gets recorded in the system. It also gets emailed off to the speaker. And so it's a way of making it more of a natural web-based process, as opposed to printing a PDF, filling out a PDF by hand, or even using the fill-in form, but then emailing it back to the person, maybe having to print it, scan it, and email it back to the person. So trying to make that a little bit more convenient. And the same logic, we created a web-based version of the membership application, and the VP of membership can sign in to approve this. And as soon as they approve it, a screen will pop up asking to create a user account for them. So this is something that we've used at online presenters. My brick and mortar club also winds up using it quite a bit. Some people will prefer to fill out the form on paper, but it is convenient to have a digital option for them. Also, paying dues online is a handy thing to have available. The method that I've been using is based on the Stripe service. So you have to sign up for an account on Stripe and link it to your bank account. Once you've done that, you can obtain a couple of credentials from that site. It's the API key and the API secret. So these are the application, programming, interface, username, and password, essentially. But it's for the two machines to talk to each other, basically to prove that you have a legitimate account on Stripe. You take that information and you plug it into a screen in RSVP Maker. And it's part of RSVP Maker because that's also used if you are hosting events where you want people to register and you also want them to pay. So that base capability is in RSVP Maker, and then there is a widget you can include in a web page where that button is supposed to show up, and I'll show you that in a minute. And I hesitate to even put this in because this is kind of experimental, but this was my attempt to have a better solution for showing timing lights in an online meeting. I've noticed that even people who are pretty experienced often will lose track of the person who's supposed to be showing a virtual background or whatever as timing lights for the meeting. They'll lose track of that little thumbnail video. And so then their excuse is, I didn't see the timer and that's why I'm over time. This is having the timing lights wrapped around the video instead of the timing lights in the video. This version is using a free product called Jitsi. There's some information I can share about that separately. But the idea is that the timer has this view with the controls, but everybody else who is part of the audience would also see the timing lights change. I do have the Zoom version of this, but it's not working very well yet. And so one of the things I'm trying to flesh out better is the documentation on the site. So there's a section called Knowledge Base that tries to break down the different articles about how to do things into sections and present that in an organized way. I do also periodically publish blog posts, but those are sort of more announcements that something new is in the product or something new is coming. The knowledge base is supposed to be where that stuff goes to live long term and be better documentation. So I'm working on that. I'm aware of it as kind of a shortcoming that needs to be improved. And so this is showing how you would go in and sign up for a website. So this is the point where I've already created an account. And if you participate in a club that uses this platform, you already have an account you can use. Otherwise, you just have to sign up for the email list and verify that, and you can get a password here. So I'm going to say my club meets every Monday at 6:30 p.m. And you notice that the time zone is specified as New York. And I get back this confirmation page that gives me some basic information about where to look for information. This also gets emailed off to you. There's a link here where I could use if I wanted to start editing my home page, but I can also just click through to see what I have so far. So this is the May 3rd webinar club. And if I want to access some of the administrative functions, I go to this section called the dashboard. And we'll see a long menu of a lot of options. So I apologize if it's a little bit overwhelming, but it's a power tool. And from the back end, we can also go back out to the website by, again, going up to the top. And now we go to Visit Site, see what it looks like on the front end. And from any page or blog post, you should see an edit link at the top that will allow you to go into the editor. There's a little orientation widget here. And from there, we can start editing. So I'm going to dive into that in just a moment. Now, one thing I did want to mention was that the regular user's view is not as complicated. So the regular user logs in. This is about what they should see on the back end. There's some information specific about upcoming meetings would also be listed on this screen, except this is a brand new website, so it doesn't have them yet. And other than that, I can see a Toastmasters menu and a profile menu. The profile is where I would go to customize if my name was misspelled. I can go in here and reset my password. There's some other information such as phone numbers for the member directory that are in here. And probably the other main screen you'd want to go to is the My Progress, which gives an overview of all the data that's been tracked through the agenda. So I could see all my speeches. I mean, the limitation is it would only be the speeches from this club. It could be multiple clubs that all use WordPress for Toastmasters, but there's not too many of those just yet. So at any rate, we do try and present the regular user with a simplified menu, and for the rest of you, I'm going to try and explain what's really important, because there's a lot of things that you could do but they're not necessarily the first things that you have to worry about when you're trying to get a website up and running. I'll show this screen again later for follow-up. This is various places that you can find me. And again, that knowledge base is something that we're going to be adding to and trying to improve, is the basic documentation for the software. Here, let me go to this demo site that I had set up earlier, and we'll go through some things over here. Maybe I should stop sharing for just a moment and pause to ask for questions up front. If you're okay with me steaming ahead, great. But if there are things I should stop and answer right now, let me know.
Stephanie has questions in the chat.
David, can you hear me?
I apologize. I think I actually had my speaker turned off.
Okay.
My
David, can you hear
reputation
me now?
as a master of technology is in danger, I'm afraid. But
David, can you hear us now?
I can, yeah.
Larry asked a couple of questions. One of them was, can the application for new members be adjusted, modified? Because you know how new members come in throughout the year? Is that the right question, Larry?
Right, in other words, on my two clubs, I've modified the application to also include the prorated club dues,
Right.
just the club dues.
Okay. Well, let's see. The way we've done that for our online presenters is there's a page called Join that lists what the club dues are, and it is displayed there. Actually, there's a screen on in the settings, and maybe I should cover this. Well, I can cover it now. Fine. Let me get out of the presentation. I'm going to online presenters. And there's actually a whole separate settings form. So the club dues schedule is mapped out in here.
Right.
And the application actually calculates that and will display it on screen depending on what month it is. Yeah, so I've tried to automate that process, but then we do also have it sort of spelled out on the front end of the website so that people know what they're in for. We just have a listing down here that shows what it would be if you were a new member versus somebody who's just adding another club, right? And that, again, there is some documentation for that on the website. I need to look at how good it is, and if you see gaps there, please point them out to me. Okay. Other things that I should cover right now?
Larry, tell them about the easy speak question you have.
Yeah, I was asking David if you have found a way to import the speeches from Easy Speak.
I don't know. Is there any sort of export function in Easy Speak that allows you to save stuff out?
I think that's a problem, yeah.
Well, I don't know the guy who runs the Easy Speak thing.
You
I
don't
actually thought
want to know him.
I'm sorry? You don't know him either?
In my opinion, you don't want to know him. Yes, I know him.
Well, if we could work out some measure of technical cooperation, that would help.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have anything specific for you at the time. And I never used Easy Speak. I didn't know Easy Speak existed when I started on this project. So I was familiar with Free Toast Host and frustrated by it.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, I'm gonna dive back in, and then definitely we'll make interrupt me if you need to. We'll make time at the end to cover questions as well. So,
David, before you continue,
sure.
Can reduce be configured for PayPal or is just Stripe?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Or
Okay, my question is, can we use PayPal instead or use Stripe?
PayPal.
Stripe.
Oh,
Stripe.
sorry, I'm still not getting it. Maybe you could type it in the chat, and I'll try and come back to it later. If that's
He asked about using PayPal.
Yes.
Oh, PayPal.
Yes.
At the time that I was investigating the two things, Stripe offered better fees for international transactions than PayPal did. I don't know if that's still true. RSVP Maker has support for PayPal in it, but it's only integrated with the event system. So if you were holding a conference or something and you wanted to offer PayPal, you could do that. I don't have a way of adding a button to the page the same way as I do with the I'm sorry, my brain is fried. The same way as I do with Stripe. So it's something that could be added.
Yeah, I've got both of my clubs on PayPal.
Okay.
And
well, I mean,
so
if the way you're integrating PayPal is by adding a snippet of HTML to the page, you can do that in WordPress.
Yeah.
It's just the
they have all the buttons now set up.
yeah, the advantage of Stripe, the way I have it set up, is that when the transaction goes through, it's logged in the system as paid. And so the VP of membership who's going in to decide whether to approve a membership can see that there's a new membership application and that we've also received a payment for it. So it's okay to approve them and get them started in the club. And for dues renewals, similarly, it's
Right.
logged in the system, and that's convenient. I just don't have as much set up for PayPal. If there's enough demand, maybe I can figure out how to make it an either-or thing, but I don't yet.
I set up PayPal so that it automatically sends an email to the membership person
Yeah,
when somebody pays.
sure.
So
Well, let me go through what I've got here. Let's see. I need to. Sorry, got something messed up here. Okay. I wanted to go over one basic WordPress concept that's important for understanding the agenda editor as well. So this is the blocks page. The WordPress editor was retooled about a year and a half, 2 years ago to revolve around a concept of content blocks. And the way this works is that each section of my site has a slightly different editor associated with it if it's a different content type. So the basic content type is a paragraph. So this is a web-based word processor where we can go in and we can mark something italic, we can mark something bold, we can add a link by using these buttons up top. But then if I go into a list, I still have a lot of those same controls, but also it allows me to change it from being a bulleted list to a numbered list, things like that that are specific to this type of content. the same thing for an image. So an image has a caption, and it has some controls over to the right, where we can decide whether we want to display this full size or medium or just a little thumbnail image. And there's some formatting controls where I can decide that I want this to be aligned to the right and everything kind of wraps around it, or aligned to, excuse me, lost track of something there. Aligned to the center. So there are a number of options that are built in for different types of content. Here's a quote. This is supposed to be something that would be displayed as a call out with the name of the person who said this thing. Here's an image gallery. And there are little widgets in here that would allow me to move these around. So this is 3 dead presidents and my daughter. Don't ask why, they were just the images that I had handy. This is a YouTube video embedded in the page. And it's actually the easiest thing in the world to embed a video in YouTube, a YouTube video in a web page. You just get the link to that page, you copy and paste on a blank line, and this player is automatically inserted. So again, the controls are specific to this type of content. There is a little bit of alignment control that could be done, and then we can have a caption underneath our video. This is also an embedded video, but it's a Facebook video, and for whatever reason, maybe Facebook rules or something, it can't be previewed here. But if a video is made public on Facebook, you can embed it in your web page as well. And it works the same way. You copy and paste in the link, or you can add that type of content. And actually one thing I haven't shown you yet and ought to is this little plus button here allows me to add a type of content. And I would pick from the list, or I can also type in the first few letters to search. So a heading would be some kind of headline that appears in here. And we can decide whether this should be H2 or H3. This is like logical organization, because H1 is the main headline of the article. Head 2 would be just below that, and head 3 would be a step below that. And this is important partly for the reader to understand the organization of your site. Also important for the search engines that use this kind of information to see how the page is organized, and the fact that something is in a headline might be a clue to them that a particular keyword that appears in there, like tweet, is more important than if it just happened to appear in the text. This is an example of an embedded tweet. So same thing as with the YouTube and Facebook videos. If you can pull out the link to a specific tweet and paste it in here, you'll get this, this little preview of the tweet. This is a PDF that's been uploaded into the system, so you can upload files like that and present people with a download button for them. Here's content organized into a couple of different columns. So there is a column block you can add, and you can specify whether it should be 2 or 3 columns, whether they should be equal width, that sort of thing. And payment button is the Stripe button that I mentioned earlier. So it has a description, dues renewal, has an amount, $50, and we specified that it should be a one-time fixed fee. and that the description, dues renewal, should be shown underneath the button. So if I update this, and go out and view it, we'll see our image, we'll see our bullet list. There's the YouTube video, there's the Facebook video, there's the embedded tweet, there's the file that I can download, here's the couple of columns, and here's my payment button. On this demo site, you have a demo account for Stripe, so that's not real transactions, and it'll actually show you a phony credit card number that you can use to test it. So you're welcome to try that out. The way that this relates to the agenda is that the agenda is also organized in blocks. And just like I had the custom block for the payment button, I have custom blocks for roles that would appear on the agenda and notes to appear on the agenda. So I call the agenda notes the equivalent of stage directions for your meeting. Those are the things that say, here we do a round of self-introductions and we allow 10 minutes on the agenda for it. So you can specify things like that. So when I'm logged in here and I have administrative rights, one of the things I should see over the right is a listing of things that I can do as an administrator of this site. So it's telling me that I can add a new blog post, or I can see a listing of them. Same thing for the pages, same thing for the events, and also the event templates. So the templates is one of the more important concepts here. I compare it to the cookie and the cookie cutter. The cookie cutter lets you stamp out identical cookies, but we also want to be able to decorate those cookies differently for the different events. And let's see. Actually, to show this properly, I should go over to my May 3rd site. So this is just starting out site. There's a number of prompts here telling me to mess around with different settings. So I am trying to guide you through that process. And here is where you would go in to add your club members, which I showed a little bit earlier in the CAN presentation. If we go into the Toastmasters meeting event, let's see, actually what I want to do is I want to edit this template. So these are the agenda notes that I mentioned. So it's saying that we're taking 2 minutes on the agenda for the Sergeant of Arms to open the meeting, and then 3 minutes. That doesn't sound like enough for self-introductions. We have roles then mapped out. So this is the role component. And one of my roles is Toastmaster of the day. Count is 1, because we only have 1 Toastmaster of the day per meeting. And he's allowed 3 minutes to introduce himself. So we're actually trying to map out both the agenda and the sign-up form at the same time to some extent, which does make it a little bit complicated, but I'm doing it for good, with good intentions. And then if we say wanted to add an additional role, if you hover your mouse between any of these things, you'll see a little plus button. And again, the plus buttons mean let's add something to the agenda. I'm going to say I want to add a new role. And this is going to be a custom role called Chat Monitor. And we only need 1 of them. And I'll update that. And as soon as I update something on the template, I'll get this prompt up top saying, would you like to create a new event based on the template, which would be creating a single event? Or do you want to create a whole series of events? Well, we've set this up saying that we're going to meet every Monday at 6:30 p.m. So probably what we want to do is create a whole series of these events. The software calculates what the every Monday dates are coming up. And, you know, maybe this is a holiday, and so I'm going to uncheck that one. But all the rest of these, I want to go ahead and set up. And so we can just add them as a batch. So I can go out and view any of these, and I can see my basic structure here defined by the template. I could sign up for a role right now. And I could also decide that for this particular meeting, you know what, we're going to have election of officers at the beginning, so we can only have 3 speakers instead of 2. We're not going to have time for our usual format. And so I need to go in here and find this. I'll say 3 speakers, and I expect that to take up about 15 minutes on the agenda. And if we only have 2 speakers instead of 3, we can also have 2 evaluators, and that's also going to take up a little bit less time. And we can update that and see our changes. So now we have an agenda with 2 speakers plus a backup speaker and 2 evaluators. One thing that I probably should have covered earlier is how you move things around too, because the default template may not be correct for the way you organize your meetings. So if I wanted to do the self-introductions, well, this doesn't really make sense, but if I want to move the self-introductions up the front even before we open our meeting, I can move things up and down using these up and down arrows. And it would be the same thing for moving the Toastmaster of the Day block farther up on the agenda. So, again, we can save that. And we would see Toastmaster of the Day followed by those notes. These notes actually are only supposed to appear on the agenda, not on the sign-up form, but I've got a little technical issue that I'm dealing with there. And then I mentioned we have the print, we have the email off the agenda. Show means I'm just going to show it on screen. I mean, if I do print here, it'll automatically try and start my printer. For online meetings, I don't actually usually print it. I just want to see it on screen. And there is an export to Microsoft Word, which is in there partly as sort of a quick and dirty hack for people who don't know how to edit the agenda or aren't confident doing that, to give them a familiar tool. I'm not going to show that to you right this moment. There are also some tools for running contests that I've promoted. I've done some other publicity around those. Oh, no, also, I mentioned the cookie and the cookie cutter earlier. We can go back at any time and make changes to our template. What do we want? We're going to have, from now on, we're going to have 4 speakers at every meeting. So this is, again, this is where we're trying to define what we do most of the time. And we're going to have 4 evaluators. So this time when I go to create or update events, one of the things it shows me is all the events that I created a couple of minutes ago that were based on a slightly different template. So I can check these all off to update them all. It also shows me that this one was modified independently. You know, maybe something special is going on that day. And so maybe I don't want to overwrite that. So I could uncheck that one and then update all the rest. So I said it was the cookie and the cookie cutter, but it is a magic cookie cutter, where even after cookies have been sent out into the world, you can go back and change the cookie cutter and change all the cookies that were based on that cookie cutter or stamped out with that cookie cutter. And so now these modified ones should have 4 speakers listed instead of 3. So that's my basic spiel. You know, there is a lot of other things that I could cover, and I'll try and cover others on demand today. But I mostly wanted to make sure that people understood how to create some of that marketing content and edit that marketing content. Actually, there's one other thing that's important that I should cover, which is how you would add a new page. So again, out of the box, we have this navigation bar that has blog, calendar, members, and Toastmasters International. So this, again, this is some boilerplate content about Toastmasters International that you might want to include in your site, or might not. Because Toastmasters International has their own site. Maybe they can market themselves. But let's suppose that we want to have a new page. Let's say, and I'll add an image to this page, just so we cover how to do that. Now again, image isn't showing up here, but I can type in the first few letters and I'll get image. And here's a picture from my daughter's graduation on our special programs page. I didn't say it made sense, but let's see, publish this. Okay, so now we have a new page on our site. The other thing is it doesn't really show up anywhere. When you add a blog post, things are automatically added to the blog. So there's sort of a built-in organization to that. But pages really, unless you might send out the link to somebody, but usually you would organize pages on your menu. So if I go into this tab called Customize, there are a whole bunch of things that I can customize about the presentation of my site. One that is specific to the LECTERN theme is Toastmasters branding, where we can pick one of these relatively standard banners to go at the top of the page. And there's a bunch of other things that you can explore on your own. But if I go into menus, see that currently this is the menu that exists, the primary menu. And if I want to add the special programs page, it's listed here. So that's going to go on the end. And we decided we don't need the Toastmasters International page. We want to make a bigger deal out of the members page. or out of the special programs page. And if I publish this, now that new menu is reflected on my site. So built in, we have the calendar page that lists our upcoming event. We have a membership page that would list people who are identified as filling a role here. The member listings are displayed for logged in members. If you're not logged into the site and you're not a member, you would only see information that the members had chosen to make public. Well, let's see. I think I got through most of what I wanted to get through. Can you put a second tier on the menus? Yes, you can. So let me show you that quickly. Back to customize, and that is useful for fitting more things in. So again, we're going to go to the primary menu, add items. There's this Toastmasters International page that I had in here before. And what we do is we indent it. Just being a little bit fussy. Oh, come on. There we go. So now under members, here's a link to Toastmasters International. I don't know whether you can do it several tiers down, but usually you would only want to have sort of a submenu under your main menu.
Yes, you can.
So, so I haven't been watching the chat consistently. Stephanie, did you see anything go by in the chat that maybe I should respond to now, or people just want to unmute and ask questions? That's okay too.
Yeah. One question that was asked: is there a way to lock the agenda just prior to the meeting?
Not currently.
Not early. Okay.
And actually explain to me, why you think that would be necessary. I mean, I can tell you, as a practical matter, I've never seen it be necessary. I've generally, in my own clubs, had a fairly, permissive attitude towards who can go in and edit things on the agenda. There are some settings where you can set security parameters to say only officers should be able to edit certain things or see certain reports. So we do have some controls like that. I've had, there's something for, in the contest tools that I developed, there's something for locking the contest setup, but I haven't found it necessary to do that for the agenda.
We had a person make a last-minute change to our agenda, and he actually wiped out parts of the agenda.
Oh, and I'm sorry, is that using my software?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, most things that go wrong are my fault. No, I honestly, I never thought of it. But that is a reasonable thing to take under advisement. I would want I would want an authorized person to have the opportunity to go back and change that record, because Joe was signed up to speak, but Sally is the one who actually showed up, and you want to make it correct in the records. I want to provide a way for you to do that, but yeah, that's a reasonable idea. I'll just have to look into how to do that, so I can add that to the list.
Yeah. We have 6 minutes left.
That should be improved. I'm sorry, Stephanie?
We have 6 minutes till the hour is up. There's a couple more questions. Are the roles assigned individual times so that if you add a speaker, it automatically updates the time?
It does. I'm not going to claim that any of this stuff is perfect. But there is something, so if they specify their manual or path and project, if somebody puts in for a 15-minute speech project, and that's going to, exceed the time, there is a warning that is displayed saying that this will cause us to go over time. To some extent, I still leave it to the VP of Education or the Toastmaster of the day, whoever is organizing that meeting, because if they ignore the warning and they sign up anyway, it's up to you to be paying attention. At least now, there's sort of limits to what I think makes sense to automate, because I want you to be able to make exceptions as well. And sometimes it's just that I haven't figured out, in terms of technology, the right way to do that. Larry.
So are you saying that anyone can go in and add a speaker position and put themselves in it?
It depends on how you have it set up. So basically anybody can, usually the self-service sign up allows anybody to come in, and if there is an open speaking slot,
right,
they can put themselves in.
Right.
In most of my clubs, a regular member could actually come in and edit another speaker role and put themselves in instead. I've never had it happen. But some of it is going to depend on the culture of your club and how you feel about that. There is, maybe I should show it briefly. There is a place where you can restrict those things. So if I go into settings for Toastmasters, there's a whole security section that defines so a subscriber in the WordPress security scheme is sort of the default role that a new member is assigned. And if I change this from no to yes and save it, then they will not be able to have that power to edit. So you can set up tiers of access where the site administrator can do basically everything. The manager can do most things except some basic things like install or activate plugins. An editor can do things related to content editing on the website. An author can create blog posts. A contributor can submit blog posts but can't publish them without somebody else approving it. And then subscriber or member is the bottom of the list. So so I have tried to think of some of the things that people would want to be able to restrict, depending on the culture of their club and how I don't know, just your attitude towards that. So Stephanie, you sent me.
I made a mistake. I meant to send it to Janet. Janet asked the question.
Okay.
There is another question. Let's see here. Let me get to that again. Okay, the next question is, can a contributor not allowed to change other speaker menu? So the answer is no there. Can the contributor not allowed to change other speakers' information? I mean,
you could change any of those roles to restrict it more tightly. I mean, there may be clubs who decide that really only an officer should be able to do any of those things. The role that I typically use for officers is called manager, and that's not part of the standard WordPress security scheme. Sort of an extra thing that I sandwiched in there. So a manager is an editor who can edit the site and has many of the admin capabilities. They can add new members, they can add new users to the system. But they can't do some administrator only things. I hope that's reasonably clear.
Anybody else have any other questions?
By the way, if any of you are techier than I am, which is entirely possible, I'm looking for help. I'm actually a writer and editor by training, self-taught as a WordPress programmer. I've definitely learned how to do a lot, including, you know, modifying those editor widgets. But I'm also looking for help, and help. You know, also, most people don't know that most Toastmasters do not know that this software exists, because it's basically only word of mouth and social media marketing. So if you learn how to use it and you become productive with it, if you can do something at your local TLI, or, you know, tell your friends in Toastmasters that it would be useful. Willie's volunteering that he can help out in the Asia time zone. That would be great. See, I guess a couple of people have hands raised. Willie, you had a question?
Did you see the next question? Go ahead.
I guess what Dennis and myself we was asking is, we found that the contributor can change others speaker information. So does it mean when I edit sign up, disable that, they are not allowed to edit their own information?
I'm sorry, I'm still having trouble
Oh,
understanding.
Dennis, you want to explain? Sorry, I'm maybe
One of these things, it might be better if you ask me the questions in writing.
No, Dennis, no answer.
It's related to the comment that I made earlier about locking the agenda.
Locking the, yeah, I mean, I do think that's a reasonable idea. It's definitely something that can be done. I just need to
I guess
I have
what
a
we could.
question. I have a question. Okay, if I am allowed to ask.
Please.
Yeah, DTM Ramkumar here. Wonderful presentation, and look forward for the software and the tools. Very handy, user-friendly. Thank you very much for your patience, for relentless efforts, and it should be benefiting to many. My question is, many of the times in the clubs, what we have facing and continuously we experienced, recently we had 24 hours online sessions, virtual sessions. The sequence of the event, sometimes like if I'm playing a table topics master role, I forget to announce the timing for the table topics. It actually happens subconsciously or consciously. We miss timeline of the event sequence. Do we have a to set up a backup in a way like captions coming? What is the next to done, without actually visible to the audience? As a reminder that next step is to be done, like we do a chat, something like that. Do we have a backup captions until we come right from the start till the end sequence of the events? Because sometimes we lose our concentration to
Like
just
that,
get focused.
Maybe have certain so the agenda notes components that I talked about are how you put in stage directions. If I understand it right, you might want to have sort of a certain ones that only show up on the Toastmaster of the Day's version of the agenda, sort of a more detailed agenda that includes more of those reminders. Am I echoing that back to you approximately right?
Yeah, you're on the line. Yeah, a little bit. But what I'm saying is, for example, we have president start introduction of the visitors, and they start with the meeting announcing, and further it goes with the TMOD. Then TMOD introduces the table topic master, and the table topic master comes immediately with over enthusiasm. He forgets mentioning about what is the timing for the table topic, because there are guests who are coming in. We are seasoned Toastmasters. Sometimes it happens, and many of the groups are experiencing that. So, in a backup as a text or a captions, the system will generate a message that this is the role, this is the next thing, this is the next item you need to do?
Wait, oh, I'm sorry, are you thinking specifically in terms of a meeting conducted online?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I don't have, I don't have a system of captioning those things, at least not yet. And I mean, you definitely can add notes to your agenda that are sort of reminders to do things at different times. I'll tell you my own experiences. I'll put those reminders on there to remind myself of things, and I'll still forget to ask for the timing report. Yeah, having it in whether it's in the software or on the piece of paper, there's no guarantee that it will be paid attention to all the time.
I agree. Thank you. I got it.
Anyways, I'll I think about it if there's something more that I can do for that. I do have something where you can decide whether you want the speech introductions to actually be on the printable agenda. Because otherwise I have them captured in the system, but you have to go look at a separate screen. So you could have maybe the Toastmaster of the day prints out a version of the agenda for themselves that has the speech introduction right under the speaker's name. So maybe it's an extra page than it would be printed for everybody else, but has more detail on it. Maybe the same sort of thing could be done for additional, little nudges and reminders. So I will take that.
Okay, thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you, because we are very much concerned about the paperless job, because environmental consideration is there. We are going online digital. So that was my question I had. Thank you for that. Well, lovely. Interesting.
Larry has a question for you.
Yes, Stephanie?
Larry has a question for you.
Well, okay, so I'm raising.
Well, it's a follow up on what you're just talking about. Is it? It's possible that you could put a PDF of what is in a Toastmasters or a table topics session, and just put up two windows on your screen, so you can see your virtual meeting, and then if you're the table topics master, you can put up that other thing, the PDF, so that you can just watch and walk right through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's more of a technique than necessarily that I would necessarily provide.
Well, we
I know what
put
he's talking about. He's talking about pinning. He's talking about pinning somebody so you can see either the timer or the Toastmaster. While everybody else is shuffled around, that person is pinned in place.
Right.
No, I was
That I know how
talking
to
about.
do, yes.
No, I was talking about content. In other words, if I want a complete script of what a table topics person says,
Right.
and timing in that would be in a PDF that I could bring up, because I'm the table topics master, and be able to read it right off. Because, we put it on the agenda also, but not really detailed, but.
Yeah. Well, I guess one other thing for particularly for an online club or a club that is online at the moment, another thing you could do is just a link. There's the main agenda that everybody sees, and then there's the instructions for the table topics master.
That's a good idea.
That is a link to the page, and maybe that's up on your website as a blog page, a blog post or a web page. So those kinds of things are definitely possible.
That's a good idea.
All right. I mean, I don't have a problem with staying on for a few more minutes, but I think we've covered most of it. If people want to duck out, feel free.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
I was wondering, where do I find did you record this session? Because I wanted to review it.
Yeah, I recorded most of it. I actually forgot to turn on the recording function at the beginning, which is boneheaded of me, but it's true. So I might actually be able to splice something together where I do the just a recording of my initial presentation, and then include all this Q&A stuff from the rest. So I'll work on that. So yeah, expect a recording to be available this week, probably early this week.
David, don't forget to show your email as well at the end.
That's a good point. I'll bring back that slide so that people do know where to reach me. And you can also just reply to the message that you got when you registered. Come on, I want to be at the end. Okay, so that's my basic information. Do connect with me on LinkedIn. I am a freelance writer, editor, and web consultant who is scrapping for work at the moment. So if you can point something to me. I was a technology journalist for years, and I'm currently doing more marketing writing and a little bit of web consulting as well. So there's my contact information. What am I missing? I do see, I think there's some things in the chat. Okay, so I have some people sending me emails. I mean, I will send out just a follow-up. So as long as you registered for this event, you'll get a follow-up message with the recording and all those details as soon as they're available. And as I say, a lot of people don't know that this exists, so you can spread the word a little bit. I put enough work into it that I like it to actually get used, and I want people to be able to use it effectively.
I must mention it every TLI I go to.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, there's definitely a lot of people who have tried it and run away screaming because there's maybe a few too items on those back-end WordPress menus. So, one of the things I tell you is you don't need to learn it all at once. You need to learn how to customize the homepage, and you need to get the basic agenda working and bring your members in and see if they like it. And somewhat controversial. I've been accused of trying to profit off my connection to Toastmasters. The Toastmasters.org thing, I tried for quite a while to make it free for clubs and supported by sponsors, but I wasn't getting any sponsors. So if a sugar daddy comes along, somebody wants to sponsor the service, I would love to make it free again. Until then, I'm trying to collect enough to cover my costs, because I got laid off a while ago, and I'm trying to explain to my wife why I'm not making any money. I need to at least break even on this stuff that I'm offering digitally.
I have another quick question.
Yes, sir.
On your email system, can you integrate with just about any email, like Constant Contact or Squirrely Monkey or whatever those different ones are?
I specifically have in RSVP Maker, there's a bunch of integration with MailChimp.
MailChimp, yeah.
The idea that there was, and so when you, if you got an invitation to this event, you got it through MailChimp, but there's some specific integration where I can take an event that I've created on my website with the RSVP functions, and I can basically turn that into a MailChimp broadcast. And so that can be fairly useful.
And can your different members go in and use that to send email to different members and or the whole group?
Well, the MailChimp integration or some sort of marketing list. So to send to your member list, it is just using an integration with basic web or basic internet email account. There are a couple of things. When you send out the agenda, it just goes through and looks up everybody who's on the member list and sends out a message to them. There is a way that people can unsubscribe because they think you're sending them too many emails. So, that comes up occasionally where people feel like they get too many email notifications. There is something where you can set it up so that people get a reminder before your meeting of the role that they signed up for and the fact that there are vacant roles on the agenda that they might want to sign up for. So you can do some of those things. And so, on Toastmasters.org, I have a lot of that stuff sort of set up as plumbing for you so that you don't have to worry about it. If you were setting up on an independent site where you'd gone to GoDaddy or whoever, you would need to set up, and at least to have the best odds of delivery, you would want to set up an email account that would act as the server for your website. There is also something where you can set up mailing lists. So something where every member can write to members at my website, and that gets distributed to the other people. That's kind of an optional add-on that you might find convenient so that people can send out social invitations or things like that. Again, it's something where you have to decide, do you want to provide members that ability? Are you concerned that people are going to feel that they get spammed that way? So for my clubs, that I do have that set up so that if they're doing something special and they would like other people to attend their special event, we try and make it easy for them to sign up for that or to distribute that message.
Thank you.
And it is also, we have that tool for sending out the agenda to everybody, but as a club officer, you might want to send out a message to everybody that's not the agenda. It's some other resource. All right, well, I think I should leave it at that for today. I thank you for tuning in. I hope this has been worthwhile. If you have other questions, you can write to that David at wpfortoastmasters.com address. I'm not that hard to find. Within the limits of the time I can invest in this and the programming skills that I have that are still a work in progress, I'm happy to do anything I can to improve it, make it flexible enough to meet your requirements. So thank you. Thanks all. And
Thank you.
Thank you for helping out.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you. Thank you.